Hello, everyone. Welcome to Love That Lasts, the relationship podcast sponsored by the ACU Faulkner Center for Marriage and Family. On today's episode, I will be visiting with Ron and Nan Deal. Married since 1986, Ron and Nan Deal are the authors of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Mindful Marriage: Create Your Best Relationship Through Understanding and Managing Yourself. And they are also popular marriage conference speakers. Ron is a graduate of ACU's Marriage and Family Therapy program and the best-selling author of more than a dozen books and resources. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist, podcast host, and a senior director for the Ministry of Family Life. Nan retired from teaching after 25 years and currently works for a Christian nonprofit ministry. They have 3 sons, a daughter-in-law, 2 grandsons, and a golden retriever. They live in Little Rock, Arkansas, and we encourage our listeners to learn more about their work at rondeal.org. So hello, Ron and Nan. Thank you so much for joining me today on Love That Lasts. I'm grateful to have a chance to sit down with you today and especially kind of focus on your new book, The Mindful Marriage, which we'll get to here in a moment. How are you both?
We're good.
We are really good. Thank you, Heidi. It's a real honor to be with you.
Absolutely. And as we were prepping a minute ago, you were talking about how hot it is there in Little Rock. Would you tell our listeners what that temperature is currently at there?
Well,
It's in the 90s and the heat index, it's going to be in the hundreds all week.
yeah,
So it is
Absolutely.
hot.
but it sounds like West Texas hot, and
Yeah.
you know that.
That's what I was saying, because that's one of the reasons I asked for you to say that, because especially anyone living in this region, we are, understanding the misery that accompanies the summers
Yes.
around here. So for sure, absolutely. And also, before we dig into this great book, I wanted to mention a couple interesting facts. Ron, I brought this up in the bio a second ago, but you are a graduate of ACU's Marriage and Family Therapy program, the in-person one that's here in Abilene, Texas. Just curious, what motivated you to pursue marriage and family therapy as a career?
Well, let me tell you, but before I do, let me just say how touched I am. The Faulkner Center. Paul Faulkner was a mentor of mine. They were amazing people. Of course, Paul and Dr. Burkeen were doing their thing, and they mentored me as a speaker. I got to travel with them a little bit while I was on the side doing my graduate studies. So thoroughly enjoyed our time being around them. And so what an honor it is to sort of work with you now.
And I actually worked 3 jobs in Abilene to put him through graduate school. So that's my
Well
claim.
done.
Thank you.
Okay,
And I
so
did,
what are those, Nan? I have to know. Anyone that knows
I
Abilene would love a little history here.
Yeah, I taught kindergarten at Bassetti Elementary and then
Okay.
did the after school program at Abilene Christian Schools for the, kids after school. And then I worked at J.C. Penney's in the dress department
and
on the
that,
weekends,
and that
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
that's how we afforded our rent
That's
on a
that's how we could pay our rent and eat.
Absolutely. Though
Yeah,
that's great. I love it.
yeah.
Yeah, good
Well, that
stuff. So
that
I
is
got started in youth ministry, and
okay.
Heidi, I figured out really fast I didn't know enough about the family in order to help teenagers. And I decided I needed to go back to school and learn more. I had been exposed to some family therapy concepts and family ministry concepts in my undergraduate, but decided I really wanted to do a deep dive. So I went to Abilene and I not only did the MFT program, but I audited everything that was offered in the field of family ministry. And Dr. Don Hebbard was teaching adjunct at the time at ACU, and he began to mentor me. And just, Burkina and Faulkner. And I was hanging around with great, Royce Money was the president at the time, one of
Dr.
the
Charles
early
Sutton.
innovators of family ministry, Dr. Charles
He was
Seibert.
the one that got
Right.
us there.
Yeah.
We were in Kansas City, and I'll never forget him coming up to Ron and saying, "Why don't you just make a move?" And we were there. We had family there. We had
Yeah.
been there for 6 years. And literally, it was as if the Lord picked us up and transported us from Kansas City to
Wow.
Abilene.
Those
Yeah.
people in ACU
Yeah.
changed my life, and I'm
Yeah.
forever grateful for it.
hmm
Well, it's really kind of you to say that. And yes, this podcast is sponsored by the ACU Faulkner Center, which I direct. And it's something that stands on the heels of these 2 great
Mhm.
giants, Dr. Faulkner and Dr. Burkeen. So I love hearing stories about how they have touched people's lives. So thank you for very much mentioning that. They were on the big stage and, did all this work, oftentimes traveling in front of people. But I love to think that what we do here, even with Love That Lasts, is a way to kind of, in some ways, kind of mimic some of that work, still putting out things related to marriage and family. And nowadays, podcasts are so common and popular.
Yes.
It's another
Yes.
way to continue to reach into this field with marriage and family. So wonderful. Well, that's good. Okay, one other little thing that's really interesting about you guys that, this is really the first time that we have met. So for our listeners, I
Yes.
wanted them to know that. But when I was preparing and reading about your bio, I quickly jumped to the part that says that you are proud owners of this golden retriever. And I thought, okay, we have to give our dogs just a second here of
All
airtime
right.
Let's
because
go. Yeah.
I know we have a golden retriever named Barkley. He just is about to turn 10 and he is a gentle giant. He is our fur child. So we have 3 boys, but then this beautiful golden retriever is certainly just something that we just consider part of our family. So Nan, what is the name of your dog and what makes
Well, we've
your
had
golden so
3.
special? Okay.
We've had 3, and she is English cream, so she's a white one. Her name is
Yes.
Billy, but we had Indiana from Indiana Jones, and then
Yes.
I puppy raised, and then he became a seeing eye dog for a young woman, Cusco
Wow.
from The Emperor's New Groove. There's a
Okay.
theme of
I
moving
see
me.
that.
Yes.
We nodded back to Indiana Jones with Willie from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom,
Yeah.
the Kate
Great.
Capshaw character. And she and I are a therapy team. We volunteer with petpartners.org and we go into schools. And right now I've onboarded to start going down to Arkansas Children's Hospital with her.
Oh,
I am
wonderful.
so
That's
excited. So,
fantastic. Well done. Man,
Yeah.
as I'm listening and getting to know you both and just, learning about your background in MFT, Ron, and then this work that you both do in speaking on marriage and now writing about marriage. And you've even brought your dog into this therapeutic journey
That's
of
right.
work as well. So it's a full family effort here at the Deal household. I totally love that for sure. Well, as we get ready to transition into today's episode, where we're going to be talking specifically a deep dive into this wonderful book, The Mindful Marriage, that you both wrote. I wanted to just say a couple things here, just so our listeners can reference this. But the Deals really want to make people aware that as we start talking about this book, there is a really beautiful free online assessment that's going to help just identify some things that relate to kind of our default coping kind of reactive style. And being able to kind of be more informed. So this free online assessment that can be found at rondeal.org/reactive coping style. And really want to encourage our listeners to tune in and to check that out because I think it will really go very nicely with our conversation today. All right. Well, as we get going and discuss a little bit more about this book, I'd like to just let our listeners hear a little bit more about the context of your relationship, Ron and Nan. So could you tell us just a little bit about how you met, just a little bit about the beginning of your love story?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, we've been married for 40 years, but I remember seeing her down the hall in 7th grade, walking into junior high and watching her open a locker. And I thought, who is that? And that was sort of the beginning. We didn't actually fall in love then. We went through junior high and high school together, 7th grade through 12th grade in Des Moines, Iowa, where we both were born and raised. So it was a number of years before we started running in similar circles, getting to know one another, became friends before we ever started dating. Then that turned the corner at one point in our high school career and
senior year,
and we started dating. And
2 years later, we were married.
Yeah, halfway through college, we got married.
In 20.
Yeah, how stupid is that?
The middle of undergraduate, and we had no clue.
Yes.
We didn't know what we were doing, but and in the middle of a blizzard in Iowa, which should have given us some inkling as to what
I remember reading that part in your book. I remember that comment about that blizzard.
We were serious. We almost lost half of our wedding party in an accident.
It was foreshadowing for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. But going back to 7th grade, wow, that's where it all took start. Okay, that's great. Well, let's kind of jump forward a little bit because as you're going to help our listeners understand, so much of what you are writing about with this book, The Mindful
Mm.
Marriage, has been a chance for you to be also self-revealing about your own relationship. And so you talk about a significant moment when your marriage almost came apart. Could you tell us about that and the road you've been on since?
Mm.
Yeah, I like to tell people all the time, it is by the grace of God that we are sitting here.
Yes.
Truly, his
Yeah.
goodness, his faithfulness to us, and his grace. Because
Mm.
we both came to the marriage ill-equipped. We had a lot of baggage between us, both of us, and we had our poor coping and
Mhm.
our poor cycles that just to get us to that moment in 2007,
7.
um, it was just poor coping on both of our parts, and we just never could land the plane with how to get better and how to really, truly, a lot of ruptures, but not a lot of repair, if I could say
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
And then in the midst of that, Ron's building a career, and in the midst of that, I take refuge in raising our three children, and so on and on it went for years to where poor coping, but then coping in our what would you say, our own reflective camps
Yeah.
of Ron's
Okay.
excelling over here in ministry and graduate school, and I'm excelling over here with the kids, and not a lot of building of the usness, if you will, that we do talk about in the book. And we had moved to another state. We had been in Arkansas for 11 years. Our boys were uh, 8,
Mm.
10, and 12 at the
Right.
time. Um, I was looking at them, and a move at that age was really hard on them. So here
Right.
I am trying to get them settled in Amarillo, Texas, get get the family going in some respects. And Ron is over in his camp, going and blowing and working and achieving and really having to. Um, and but we were still in those like we were in two homes, really.
Yeah, I would
Hmm.
say I think we're in hindsight we were like a lot of couples. Keep
Yes.
in mind this is 20 years into our marriage. So we have a lot that is good in our
Yes.
life, in our relationship.
Yes.
We weren't just a complete disaster. We had a lot
Yes.
that was very positive, and yet these reoccurring issues that we couldn't get past and didn't really know how to resolve. And so underneath that tension was just sort of steadily rising.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Mm.
we make this move. We have these boys. It's sort of a seminal time in their life. We're on our own financially for the first time, and it's stressful, and
We are
and
six
it all sort of hits.
we're
Mm.
16 hours from any kind of family or support. I'm feeling very isolated and alone, having to start over again. I've got older children now who are looking to me and saying, "We don't like it here. We didn't want
Mm.
to move here." It was a very stressful time, and I'll never forget Ron had been gone. He'd been traveling, he'd been writing, he'd been doing all the things, and he just had come home, and it was after the boys had gone to bed, and I met him with a suitcase, and I said, "You know what? I just don't want to do this anymore. So it's you or me, or get us some help."
Mm.
And that was it. I mean, that was sort of, I knew we had had struggles, but I didn't know she was at a point where she was like saying, I'm serious, done with what is. This either gets better or we're not going to continue forward. And so I was like, okay, we'll get some help. And
Yeah.
the long story short is, and this is all in the introduction of the book, the long story short is we ended up in Dr. Terry Hargrave's office the next day. It was, you want to talk about the mercy of God.
Hmm.
Mm.
I
Got in
fully expected
quickly.
him. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yes.
fully
Yeah.
expected, and I had read his academic work when I was in graduate school at ACU back in the early 90s. So I
Right.
was familiar with who he was. I respected him for what he had done, and he was one of the only people I felt like I could trust with our life and our marriage.
Hmm.
And by God's grace, we ended up in his office, and little did we know that he was um, how do I say this? He was developing a new model of therapy that today
Mm-hmm.
is readily accepted and widely used around the world called restoration therapy. But back in 2007, we were on the front end of really sort of being the recipients of some of that work.
Okay.
And fast forward, it changes our
Mm.
life. We have
Yes.
another family catastrophe related to the death of one of our children, and Dr. Hargrave was still walking alongside of us even after
Mhm.
that. And all of a sudden, we're seeing the benefits in us individually and together from this model. And
Mhm.
we now have basically said we want to help everybody we know find what we
Mm,
found because we're a living example of how it changes us. And so we teamed up with Terry and his wife to write The Mindful Marriage. And that's what we're
right.
doing is sharing what they have developed.
Yeah, I
That's
say
so good.
I'm a
Yeah, go ahead.
kindergarten teacher by trade, but truly, it's just what I brought to the book is a testimony of God's grace
Hmm.
and the gift of this work that Terry so generously helped us see ourselves
in,
and see our
in
marriage
new and
Right.
important ways.
and help in the redeeming process that God had to do in our life. And
Yeah.
so, when Ron and Terry and Sharon came to me and said, "Hey, let's write this." I'm like, "Well, I'm not a writer, but I will share what God has done, and I want this for other people
Right. Yeah,
because
that's
I
wonderful.
felt very hopeless.
Mm.
I felt
Mm,
very isolated and alone. Talk about intimidation going into his office when Ron has handpicked him, which I said, pick somebody that you trust. And yet here
right.
I am, little old me going in here. I don't have a therapy background, but to go in there and to just be blessed by him. And then, like Ron said, after Connor passed, he just truly then stopped doing restoration therapy and was really just carrying us and doing grief therapy.
Mm,
And I think about God's provision,
Yeah,
you know,
mm,
very beautiful to us.
absolutely. What
the
a
gift.
testimony. Yeah.
What
I
a
want
gift.
to I want to circle back around before we really do get a little more into restoration therapy and how it relates to the book. But a couple things that I wanted to touch on, you know, um, also as a therapist, I get it. And even as a person married, you talk about, when you reach that point, Nan, when you brought the suitcase and said, look, something's got to change.
Mhm.
Obviously, this wasn't something that just happened overnight.
Right.
No.
And that's one of the things I like talking about with people, even through this podcast, is just being mindful that all marriages are going to have challenges.
Mm.
And
Exactly.
the importance of realizing, though, that when people do kind of reach this crisis moment, oftentimes it did not occur overnight. It has
That's
probably
No.
right.
been building. And you kind of
Yeah.
mentioned, Nan, kind of rupture without repairs.
Hmm.
And I talk about that with people or do marriage seminars for churches and say that, oftentimes what we can see is we can start this drifting effect. And
Hmm.
Mm.
maybe at the beginning we don't see it, or we kind of do, but life gets busy. There's lots of demands, especially with children. And it's very easy to start drifting off course.
Yeah.
And before you know it, when we are not repairing and working through, there really can be the process of getting really off track.
Mhm.
So
Sure.
you bring up this point when you do show up in Dr. Hargrave's office, and let's join in that part right now because
Mm.
obviously your marriage is a testimony, and I appreciate so much your willingness and vulnerability to share a really hard season, but also giving people hope to see what was redemptive through this. So let's for a moment take a little bit of a look at this model of therapy that you mentioned Dr. Hargrave creating. Tell us about restoration therapy and how it does relate to your book, The Mindful Marriage.
I tell people if you could take everything we know about the attachment literature in terms of relationships and how we connect with people in intimate relationships, if you could take modern day neuroscience that's just 30 years old, maybe, put it together with Paul's admonition throughout the New Testament to take off your old self and put on your new self, and figured out a practical way to make all three of those things work together. That's what we call RT. Dr. Hargrave will tell you the elements of RT are not necessarily innovative or new, but the way he's put them together, the way it organizes our sense of self and how we know who we are and why we do what we do. That's really important. Why do I do those same old things that I don't like about myself?
Mm,
Why do I do that? And how do I stop? How do I move into new directions? He's figured out a process to just help people map it, organize it, and have a plan. And it's got so much depth to it. I mean, I could go on and on about how nuanced it is, but at the end of the day, it's practical. It's
mm,
extremely practical, and it's something people can actually manage and do. And
Mhm.
so there's the elements of it. It's theological, it's
mm,
deeply spiritual. I think it's
Mhm.
one of the best spiritual formation theories or ways of thinking about how we grow as Christians
mm.
that's ever been created. But it also integrates this whole idea of neuroscience, how the brain and the body work, and how all that comes together. So sophisticated and practical all at the same time.
I think with that first visit, and I can speak for myself, taking that assessment and finding out your reactive coping is so important
Yes.
because really in that first session, he's kind
Mhm.
of nailing
Yeah.
both of us of our reactive and our coping.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He's also asking us to come to humility within ourselves. But I will say, I went in on fire. Like
Mhm.
I was ready for him to change. And I
Mhm.
was ready for Terry to tell him what he's been doing and come to my side. So, uh, and yet, but there's Nan's coping. I come from a very broken home, very dysfunctional home. I've wanted that to change my entire life. I've wanted
Mhm.
this, I've been pointing the finger at everything my entire life. And then our son passes away. And then I have this abandonment issue with God. And so I'll never forget we were sitting in there and we hadn't even walked through the doorway, the threshold of the counseling room. And I said to both of them, I said, okay, you two, no funny business here. I mean, we're going to lower it down, land the plane. It's just poor little old me here and the two of you, no funny business. And I'll never forget, Terry was just so gentle. And he said, well, Nan, come on in. And I want you to go first. And I just
Mm,
unloaded. I unloaded with everything. And a lot of it was family of origin, wounds and
Mm.
pain.
Mm.
But boy, was I
mhm.
pointing the finger at Ron, and I really, truly wanted him to fix him. And
Right.
I'll never forget, he looked at me at the end of that session and he said, Nan, if you would allow God to heal all of this brokenness in you, it'll be the most beautiful part of you.
Wow.
And I said, because I'm still sitting in my pride and in my selfishness and in my pain. What?
What do you mean?
What do you mean? I mean, I've been trying to scrape all this off and get him to do what he needs. And he said, no, no, listen to me.
Mm,
And he said it again. And I tell you what, it has been true. It has been a journey of me
Mm.
mm.
allowing God to heal me and dealing with the things within me so that then I can turn and come to Ron
Yeah.
and we can build this bridge.
Heidi, we're
Right.
we're doing mindful marriage conferences in churches around the country, and we have come to the belief that most couples like us, good-hearted,
Mhm.
well-intended, loving, God-fearing people, spend most of their marriage trying to get somebody else to become something else so that I
Right.
feel loved and I feel okay and
And I
I
feel
feel
safe.
safe. And we're so focused on the external everybody else that we don't put on the humility of looking hard into the mirror about me and how I
Right.
have to deal and get self-control with me. And you're not going to
Yeah.
do, you're not going to sit with Terry long before he helps you to
Mhm.
go, yeah, you got to stop that, Ron. You got to look in the mirror instead of pointing fingers at her all the time.
Well, and I think that speaks to the subtitle of your book, right?
Yes, it
Which
does.
that's really where the subtitle, the first part of the book kind of like is what gets people to take it off the shelf or maybe to click a
Mhm.
little further. But really the subtitle is what really tells the story because the subtitle of Mindful Marriage is create your best relationship through understanding and managing yourself, right?
There it
Exactly
is.
what you both are talking about. We
Mhm.
cannot change other people. But I
Mhm.
see exactly what you're talking about. I see it in my practice. I see it as I engage people around marriage. it's easy. I get it. We think it, if I can get someone else to take the move or if they will change.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
what I love what your book is getting at is really where the change has to start. This is also just another reminder, as I mentioned at the beginning of our episode, that as Nan referred to this online assessment, please, for our listeners, as you're hearing this, check it out. Go to rondeal.org/reactive coping style because it will provide you some much needed information. Awareness is a great first step in being able to make some changes.
And it is
Mhm.
free, by the way. So
That's right.
free and
Free is
easy.
good. We love
Free is good.
with the
Right.
gas prices going on, we'll take free any day, right? For
That's
sure.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to move into something also about the book. You refer to this idea of a couple's usness.
Mhm.
Usness. That's an interesting word. So
Yeah.
tell our listeners, what is a couple's usness and how does emotional dysregulation affect it?
Okay. So let me give you a practical example of usness.
Uh-oh.
My wife, she's a workout queen. Okay. Used to be a runner. Now she's a walker because of some injuries, but she walks faster than most people run. All right. Let me just put it that way.
I do.
And every once in a while, she invites me to go walk with her. Now I'm Mr. Lazy.
I wish
Okay.
he would do it every day. Because you know what this golden retriever does? Golden retriever
You would think would walk.
hides under the bed.
But
First dog I've ever had that does
So
not want to
funny.
walk. And I'm a community person. I like to be in community. I like to have a dog or a person with me on these walks.
Can you see where
Right.
this is going?
I'm a
I hear you. Keep
2 on the
going.
Enneagram.
Yeah.
So hey,
So she wants to go and she wants company. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. I don't need to walk. So Nan likes to walk. Ron does not like to walk. But our usness is learning and liking to walk.
yes.
Mm,
Usness is the thing you've created on the day you got married. It's a living organism called marriage. And it's not just fed by her or by me, but it's the culmination of who we are when we're together. It's how we bring ourselves to the table. It's what we've created. It's almost like a child. If you think of it
mm.
as you got to feed a child, you got to care for it, you got to nurture, you got to pick it up and hug it every once in a while, and every once in a while you need to spank it, and you need you need to take care of that thing so that it's growing and thriving. That's what usness is, and so it sort of captures this idea that relationships are living organisms,
Right.
and we need to treat them as such. And there are things that our usness likes that Ron does not like. I enjoy getting out there and walking with her. We do have good conversation. I do struggle to keep up. But outside of that, it is a joyful experience for me. Even though I don't want to do it, I like it when I'm there because it's us that is alive and well in that moment. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
things that married couples have that either partner could take it or leave it, but because it's part of them, because it's a part of the thing that they have created together and that they nurture together, it helps that living organism thrive and move forward.
Yeah. And with any living thing, if you don't take care of it, it withers and can
Yes,
die, right?
it does.
And
Uh,
so I love what you're kind of bringing up with that is that it really gives a picture for my listeners to really have this idea that when you think about a marriage, it's a living thing. It's made
that's
up of
right.
two living people. So it's a living component of this
Mhm.
sharedness that you have to nurture.
Now
And I, yeah, go
you
ahead.
asked about sorry, you asked about dysregulation, and I just want to add, so this is where dysregulation comes in. Dysregulation is a big neurological term that everybody's throwing around these days, and essentially just sort of captures this idea that what happens in your brain anytime you feel some measure of threat. And threat can be you're driving home from work this afternoon and somebody crosses the double yellow line into your lane coming at you head on. That's a perceived threat, right?
Right.
Clearly, something bad could happen here. Threat is um, an argument with a good friend or downsizing at work. Guess what? You don't feel safe. There's threat there.
Mhm.
Threat is also criticism from your spouse.
Mm,
Threat is also, yeah, I just asked you if you'd be interested in having sex and you didn't even answer. That's threat. Like it feels like I'm unwanted in that moment. And that's bigger than the physical question. It's more about does your heart want me.
Or
All of these things are what we call perceived threats.
or the
Okay.
overworking, the extending yourself to more meetings and more travel.
Where
Right.
are you?
Or the mom that's saying, well, the kids all have an activity and then they have another activity and they really need me. So I need to, I need to serve them first. And I'm
Right.
on this committee or that committee doing this at church or with my friends.
So let's track. So perceived threat, car coming into your lane. Ooh, I gotta get out of the way. What your brain does is goes into fight or flight, and your brain goes into self-protection mode. Now, what's really important about this is the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of your brain that's normally really responsive. And when you sit in church and you're studying God's word and you go, yes, I want to be a kind, loving person. That's your prefrontal cortex absorbing God's will for your life. When a car crosses a double yellow line, what's happened is your brain is kicked into self-protection mode, and it's not pondering the godly things of the world. It is now only in self-protection, fight or flight. Guess what? Criticism or your spouse not being available, or here we go again, other things are more important than our usness. Guess what? It activates your brain the exact same way threat does on the highway or somebody coming at you with a knife. You go into self-protection mode. And when that happens, there's only four things that we do in fight or flight. We go into blame the other person, shame myself. We try to control the circumstances, or we escape them by just saying, I'm out of here. I'm going to go numb with drugs, alcohol, my phone, my Instagram reels, whatever it is. We can numb in 1,000 ways. But the point is, at this point, what I am now bringing to our usness is nothing good. I'm
Right.
only bringing harsh, reactive coping that is not helpful for our usness. It's not
Yeah.
feeding it, it's starving it. And so the individual response collides with the couple response, and now we're hurting our usness. And that's what we help people to see how that happens, why that happens, and what they can do
And
about
if you
it.
stay in a state of that dysregulation where you're going to those copes and there's no repair,
Right.
that's when that usness definitely is withering and dying.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what great insight. I mean, this notion of usness, this living component of what it means to be connected as one in marriage. And you talk about what can happen when we're dysregulated. And I would imagine what may be a threat to one spouse could be different for another, right? We don't
Yes.
necessarily have the same ways that we perceive threat. But nonetheless, you talk about, and I wanted to restate these, the four main ways that we kind of can cope when we're feeling pain, right? The way we're responding. And so you list these as blame, shame, control, and escape. Is that correct?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Right.
And really, those are categories of behavior. So blame takes the form of anger or being threatening towards the other person. That's basically saying, you're messing this whole thing up. It's your fault. So there's a whole list of actions that we do, but they all sort of get characterized as blame. So blame is about the other person. By the way, I know my style, and people in the book are going to discover their coping style. You do one or four of these. Every person on the planet does one or all four of these. I do two of them exceedingly well most of the time. That I'm a blamer controller. And she's well,
All four, but in concrete sequential order.
Okay.
It goes back to childhood.
Yeah.
So I am going to blame. I'm going to come out controlling with words, lots of words. If those two things don't work, then I'm just going to go into shame, which really, when you're shaming yourself, then that gets depressive. And
Right.
then I
And you
go into
isolate, escape. Yeah.
definitely withdraw.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different ways this looks on the outside, but basically it all falls into those four categories. And here's the point. When we showed up in Dr. Hargrave's office in 2007, we had no working knowledge
We didn't know.
whatsoever of our own coping. I could tell you everything in the world she did when she got upset and why
Right.
she did it. And I had a story to tell about her.
And if he'd only not, then I wouldn't. So
There you
Right.
go.
Right.
that.
Right.
See how we
Round and round we go.
see how we justify ourselves? If they won't, then I wouldn't have to. Like No, no, no. That doesn't count. See, at the end of the day, imagine standing before God going, yeah, but Lord, she wouldn't stop doing the anger controlling things. So guess what? I'm relieved of any responsibility of being
Mhm.
the blamer controller that I was. That ain't the way it's going to fly, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So at the end of the day, this biblical admonition to put on self-control,
Right.
Ron, you deal with your old flesh self. By the way, that flesh thing we talk about at church all the time has a neurological component that we've just
Mm.
described. There's some stuff going on under the surface that creates habits that is a part of the flesh that Paul talks about in Romans 6 and 7. And it's my job,
Mm,
Heidi, it's my job
yeah.
to manage that part of me and not be that person, but to instead try to live into the redeemed spirit God has offered me in Jesus Christ. Now that takes discipline and work,
Mhm.
but oh my gosh, is it liberating
Right. Absolutely.
when you finally get there. It is so liberating.
That is
Well,
so rich. I just want to emphasize what you're talking about here. And it's so different than what the world teaches us, though, right?
oh,
The
definitely.
world's messages take care of self,
Yep.
think of self, prioritize
Mhm.
your needs, right?
Live your truth. Yep.
Right. But we're trying to really think about this as followers of Jesus. What does
Yeah.
this mean, right?
Yes.
And this idea of the old self and the new self that you're talking about here. I want to transition to something that you, I think, are touching on, but I wanted to bring it into focus a little bit more because as you bring out components of your book, The Mindful Marriage, you talk about neurology, self
Mm.
regulation, how we manage this reactivity that's being brought up. And then there's this underlying theme about humility.
Mm.
Why is that important? Do you want to give us some insight, Nan, to that?
Yes, because our flesh wants what our flesh wants.
Mm.
I mean, just go throughout the Old Testament, and the king did what was right in his own eyes. And the king did what was right in his own eyes. And the people grumbled
Mm.
after the Lord brought them out. You know, it on and on it goes. And I'll never forget it's this year we're going through the Bible again with our small group at church. And I'm just sitting there reading that going, these guys were crazy. Why can't they get it right? And I'm convicted in my spirit of the Lord going, and yes, you too, sweet girl. I
Mm,
what I want in my own eyes is for people to love me well, to not leave me, to not abandon me, to think of me. I haven't had that in my family of origin. It seemed like in a season, Ron was only thinking about himself and his ministry and his career. I I want what I want. My flesh wants what it wants.
mm,
But when we're in step with the Spirit and our identity is rooted in Christ, and we know who we are in Him and what we have in Him, that unabounding love, that steadfastness, that never forsaking or leaving you, your identity is rooted in Christ,
right.
then you can live out of that with love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and self-control. You can love a First Corinthians 13 love. I cannot do that on my own.
Mm,
I want to keep a record of wrongs. I am not, I'm rude. I'm not patient,
Mm.
but I'm called to that when I
mm.
am rooted in truth and rooted in God. And I am
Amen.
asking Him, show me my identity in you. And truly, it has been it really, truly has been a transformation for me because I wanted my identity to come from Ron. I wanted my identity to come from motherhood. I wanted my identity to come from being a daughter of these people.
Hmm.
And that is all going to fail and fall. They're all fallen people.
Right, right.
And Heidi,
God is our foundation.
what makes what Nan is saying so difficult?
It's
I,
so hard.
when we're sitting in
It's a
church going,
daily.
yeah, my identity's in Christ, and I need to live out of that, and feel peace in my heart, and then I bring a calm kindness to the people around me. That sounds great when you are in your right mind, when your prefrontal cortex is operating online like it should be. But when I get dysregulated, it's when I get under threat. It's when and as you said, everybody perceives threat a little bit differently based on their childhood and previous family relationships, trauma they may have experienced.
Right.
But when I feel that threat, then that calm part of me that wants to be good just goes right out the window. And even though I know I shouldn't be that way, I start reacting. I start coping in ways that make things worse, not better. And I stop being the kind person. So living out of my identity in Christ is one thing when I'm calm. It is incredibly difficult to do when I am feeling unsettled about life and relationships. That's where the humility comes in.
Yes.
Because if
Right.
I'm unwilling to go, wait a minute, Ron, it is still your job. Dr. Hargrave puts it this way: it is my job to steward my pain. I may feel
Right.
like at any given time, Nan is being unkind to me. I have pain. But it's my job to steward that moment, not her job. See, what we want to default into is, oh, she's being mean. Therefore, stop being mean. I'm going to do everything I can with blame and control to get her to stop being mean. No, I don't have the right to start
Yeah.
being blaming, controlling. It is my job to manage that part of me that is in pain and go, wait a minute, what's that about for you, Ron? Well, I'm just feeling like she's not paying attention to me right now. And I'm feeling, oh, that criticism also sort of made me feel inadequate. So whose job is it to manage your inadequacy? Is it Nan's job or is it Ron's? It's Ron's job. That's humility. That's humility. And let me tell you, Heidi, nobody else in the world is offering this little prescription other than Jesus Christ.
Amen. Yeah.
He's the one saying, Ron, it's your job. Be like me. Count others more significant than yourselves, Philippians chapter 2. Put on the humility of Christ. Now I'm going, whoa, okay, I'm feeling pain, but I've got to manage this and not react out of this pain. Who am I supposed to be right now? I need to downshift. Instead of being angry and critical back, I need to listen. I need to absorb. I need to consider. Maybe there's something here for me to. That's what humility does. That's what it gives rise to. And that's a
Right.
game changer when pride only leads to arguments. There's a passage in Proverbs that says pride only leads to arguments. And when two people are constantly just at each other in pride, guess what you get? Nothing good.
That's so true.
But humility is going to invite grace and it's going to change things.
But what
You-
we're not saying, I do want to say this to your listeners. What we're not saying
Of course.
is staying in an abusive
Yeah.
relationship.
Sure.
Humility does not mean you just
Yes.
become a punching bag. It doesn't mean that
Definitely.
at all.
Definitely.
In fact,
Absolutely.
if anything, in humility, you would say, oh, wait a minute. God tells me I'm worth a whole lot more than what is happening right now.
Right.
And therefore, I'm going to honor that. I'm
And
going to
draw
step,
that boundary. Yeah.
I'm going to step away
Yes. Get some help. Go to a pastor. Go to a
until we can
counselor.
figure out, well, I don't have to just take it.
Truly, and that has come up in
Yeah.
our conferences and as
No, I'm
we
glad.
go.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That is
Yes.
another. That's another piece, right?
When
But
both of you are coming at it and you're both doing the work in a beautifully humbling posture and you're both staying in your lane, dealing with your own stuff, your own pain, your own dysregulation and your coping,
yes,
and you're owning it, and then you're coming to one another, it can only bless your
right.
essence. And I can say now, we have been hard at this for how long
Oh
now?
my goodness.
Really hard.
Well, I would say 20 years we've been working at it. We've been hard at it for a good 10, 12 years.
Yeah,
And
10.
we will tell you
It's like day and night.
day and
Your
night.
relationship, day and night.
At our worst, we always loved each other, but we sure didn't like each other. We like
Yeah.
each other now. We really enjoy each
I
other.
love that. I love that. Well, something that comes to my mind is you were talking about this idea of the necessity of humility to really be able to move things in this better direction. The thing that got me kind of thinking was humility is that important ingredient for transformation to occur. Like the
Yes.
transformation that you're talking about here cannot happen unless we are willing to open ourselves up to this place of change, right? And again, I just want to contrast that. And that's one of the reasons I really feel so strong about this work with the podcast Love That Last is to give people a different perspective than the world gives them about relationships. Because you're not going to hear that from secular media, from secular therapy, from the secular books, right? Because as Ron and Nan are mentioning, is that this is rooted fundamentally in what it means to follow Jesus and to let that transform who we are. I want to now move into a piece though that I think is really important because you write about these 4 steps that can be used to help break unhealthy cycles. Could you tell us what these 4 steps are and what's involved in actually putting them into practice?
Okay, so the 4 steps is really the culmination of all the work. And by the time people get to that in the book, it makes sense because what we will have them do is what Nan and I went through is first, you're going to understand your pain, where it comes from, and how it leads you to cope in the ways that you do that blame, shame, control, escape stuff. You'll map that on paper and you'll know, oh my gosh, that's me. And then you'll also explore what the Bible says about you, what's true about you from God's point of view. But you'll also learn how to speak into this need to be loved and this need to be emotionally safe in relationships. You'll learn how to give that to yourself, not sit around waiting for somebody else to change. And you'll learn how to speak that truth over your own life in such a way that it empowers you to then take new action and become something different than your old coping, blame, shame, control, escape stuff. So when you lay those side by side and you'll map it all on paper and you'll have a little diagram, when you look at it, you essentially have an old self. That's what Paul calls that part of you that's that was the unredeemed Ron. But the new self is being called into something new and better and more Jesus-like. And you'll actually have that contrast, my old and my new. And then the 4 steps tells you how to actually put it into practice in the moment.
Okay.
So,
And it kind of sounds like this generally. What is my pain? What am I feeling at this moment in this painful moment? What am I being triggered by? How am I coping in this moment? But what is the truth about this moment? And what can I do differently?
now
Okay.
when you say
Basically.
those, imagine we're having an all-out argument right now. And right smack in the middle of the argument, I stop and I go into my 4 steps. And I said something like, okay, I am feeling really disrespected by you right now. Number 2, what I usually do with that is I get blaming and I throw it right back and I argue with the simplest little details of which is not the point, but that's what I do. That's number 2. Number 3, what's the truth? The truth is, gosh, Ron, what is the truth? Well, the truth is God loves me. I guess I'm okay.
Hmm.
I am redeemed and saved. Okay, and there's also a truth that you care about me, but you know what? I'm going to tell myself I'm okay. I'm adequate. I'm capable. I do make mistakes. That's absolutely positive about me. So I'm going to own my mistakes. Okay, so if that's true, number 4, what am I going to do different? Instead of arguing with you right now, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to ask
Hmm.
you to give me a little grace. I'm going to take a breath and I'm just going to listen because I can tell there's something on your heart I need to hear. Let's just try to pick it up and regroup from that. Now, Heidi, if I were to do all 4 of those out loud, let me tell you what's happening. Number 1, I'm saying it out loud to myself. And we all know that neurologically, when you say something, it's different than thinking it. Thinking it doesn't
Right.
get you there. Saying it activates all the parts of your brain that you need. It helps bring your prefrontal cortex back online. And that's helping me get to a calmer, more self-controlled place. That's huge. But a second thing is happening is I'm signaling to Nan, you know, that old Ron, the one you really hate right now, he just went away. And Ron's trying to get a hold of himself. It actually is a little attractive when she sees that humility in
Yeah,
me
for
coming
sure.
out and I'm owning me and I just confessed. Basically, steps 1 and 2 is confessing what I've been doing wrong, and I just said it out loud. Well, now she doesn't have to make me see it because I see it. See, it's signaling me, Ron, we need to go somewhere new. It's signaling her, our usness is
Mhm.
about to go somewhere new. And that gives her pause to take a breath. And maybe, just maybe, with God's grace, she'll start looking in her own mirror and she might do her own four steps and she might get to a
Mm,
better spot. And now both of us are bringing something. I'm just telling you, this is transformational. And all
right.
it takes is one party to
Yeah.
get a hold of themselves, regroup, and shift into new
Yeah.
behavior. I can't just think it, I can't just say it, I have to do it.
Right.
But as I do, it invites us to regroup and for the relationship to have a different outcome.
And it wasn't just one
Absolutely.
time. It
Mm.
wasn't just
Oh
one
my
time.
gosh, a
Right. You have to
thousand
practice
times,
it. Yeah.
10,000
Oh
times.
my
Right.
goodness. Practice and practice and practice. It's a new muscle you're
Yeah.
using and
Exactly.
building up for sure.
Well, and just like you mentioned with the, kind of the neuroscience and how the brain functions, is that we're activating different pathways.
Yes.
But the more that you do this, the more chance that you're going to continue to activate
Mhm.
something better on the process.
Mhm.
So practical. I love so much of what you're saying. My brain is just kind of soaking in so many of these pieces, and I think for our listeners too, that even may not come from a therapeutic background, but maybe listening and thinking, wow, this could be really insightful or helpful to my marriage. Please check this book out, because I think what we will find here is a model and an opportunity to look at our marriages in a different way, a wonderful, helpful way. And I love how so much of this is integrated with science, but theology and just the practical ways that this can all be approached. I also just want to say to you, I know we're getting close to the end of our segment together today, but I want to just thank you so much for your courage and your willingness to let your marriage be part of your testimony,
Mhm.
and opening it up for others. Because I think as we all realize that sometimes it is very difficult for people to take these first steps to get help.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that every moment of challenge of marriage is going to result in winding up in a counselor's office. But what I always like to remind people is that don't struggle in silence, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And, find the resources around you, talk to someone, bring it into the light. Your marriage is worth it. And
Yes,
you're worth
absolutely.
it, right? And I love what you started off saying earlier that Dr. Hargrave had told you, Nan, is that even these places that are so hard and difficult and our own wounds or hurts, that letting God work in that to redeem and restore can become some of the most beautiful parts of us,
And
and
if I
beautiful
may,
parts of our marriage journey too.
Yes.
and if I may, you're witnessing that right now. I mean,
Mm,
this Nan is using this part of her story to bless thousands of people, and it's actually come about. And we would
mm,
have never guessed it. And to the point you just made, I just want to say thank you, but I also just want to say to your audience, um, this is not just about our marriage. This whole self-control thing is about me spiritually walking with Jesus.
Yes.
It,
amen.
it has
Yes.
been the
Yes.
best discipline for me just to grow and to mature. And do you think I love, but my greatest pain in my pain cycle is this feeling inadequate. So how much do you think I like telling people what a jerk I was for 20
Mm,
years in my marriage? And how much do you think I like confessing all of these little elements of blame, shame, blame and control tactics that I'm really, really good at? See, I'm basically confessing my inadequacy, which guess what? Is my step number 4. It is
mm,
doing something different
Yeah.
in light of who I am. Humility requires me to share this with people so that they can be blessed by it. It doesn't do me a lot of good, but
Mhm.
it moves me toward out of my old self into my new self to just be even talking about it out loud. So this is not just about growing up our usness. It's about
right.
growing Ron up and Nan
Mhm.
up. And
That's
we are on
exactly
the
right.
journey for the rest of our life. We are in for whatever the Lord
Yeah.
has for us.
That's exactly well said. Well said. Well, listen, I want to thank you, Ron and Nan, for just truly a beautiful and insightful conversation today. And for our listeners, please, 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 please click, run, go, get the mindful marriage and visit rondeal.org for more resources. And until next time, whether you're dating, you're engaged, or married, may your journey of love be shaped by Jesus and lead you to a love that lasts. Thanks, Ron and Nan. It has been a pleasure getting to sit down with you today.
Thank you.